On the one hand, it is Shabbat. It is the night before the Rotenstreich B'nai Mitzvah. And on the other, we remember Kristallnacht tonight. On the evening of November 9th, 1938, there was a night of terror that sent shockwaves around the world. The Nazis carried out an organized riot or pogrom in Germany and Austria directed against Jews, their synagogues, their places of business. In thousands of towns and cities, hundreds of synagogues were destroyed, and thousands of Jewish establishments were burned or vandalized. About 30,000 people were arrested for being Jewish, and almost 100 Jews were killed. This night was called Kristallnacht, Crystal Night, or the Night of Broken Glass, by the Nazis because of the widespread destruction that left broken glass from storefront windows and synagogues lying shattered in the streets. My father's side of the family was there that night. They bore witness to the atrocities perpetrated. They knew the horrors that would ring from that night forward through history, as did many of your families. Tonight, we remember this tragedy, honoring our ancestors, our brethren, through their musical tradition. And we invite up the Rotenstreich family to light our Shabbat candles. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, metzivanu להדליק נר של שבת.
For those who are able, we rise together for our Kiddush 123. No, Asher.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei pari hagafen.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav, v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho, be'ahava uvratzon, hin hilanu, zikaron lemase v'reishit, ki hu yom tehila lemikra kodesh, zeher litziyat Mitzrayim, ki vanu v'charta, ve'otanu kidashta, Michol Hamim, V'Shabbat Kodecha, V'Ahava Uvratzon, Hin Chaltanu, Baruch Atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat.
Amen. L'chaim.
The older, he drinks first. You got to save some for the little brother.
Continue with Psalm 98 on page 133. 138. We've reached the pinnacle of Kabbalat Shabbat, Lecha Dodi. Lecha Dodi likrat kalam penei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha ki hi mekor haberacha merosh mikedem nesucha sof maseh במחשבה תחילה. Please rise as we greet the Shabbat bride. Boi v'shalom ateret pala gam simcha u'metzola.
Middle of page 140.
Tzadik katamar yifrach ke'eres palvan onisken shetulim beveit Adonai mechatzarot Eloheinu yafrichu. Odienu bun meseiman
sheni meran hanimiu lehagid ki yashar Adonai tzuri tzuri velo ablatabo.
Before we chant our Chetzi Kaddish on page 144, this service is substantially different from normal Shabbat services, not to state the obvious, with the special garb that Dr. Whitner, Dr. Seelig, and Cantor Whitner are wearing, but one of the reasons why we engaged Cantor Whitner to be our cantor a couple years ago is because of his connection to the Shoah and the significance to maintain German liturgical music or German liturgical nusach. So many of the prayers that we chant from our Torah service to the Kiddush, they were arranged by German composers in the German-speaking land. So normally this is not as participatory, but it's this music that needs to endure for generations to remain alive. So I wanted to share that with you as we really experience the Shabbat, as we remember and we also preserve. 144.
יתגדל ויתקדש שם רבה בעלמא תברח חירותי וימליך מלכותי בחייכון וביומייכון ובחי דכל בית ישראל בגלה בגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן יהי שמי רבה מברך לעולם ולעלמי עלמיה יתברך יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה תמירן בעלמם מאמרו Amen.
We rise together, 146.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bidvaro mari varvim. B'chokhmah poteh she'urim uvivuna meshneitim chalif et hazmanim sader et hakokavim. V'misfertehem barkia kirtsono.
Borei yom v'layla golel or mipnei hoshe v'hoshe mipnei or. Uma'avir yom umevi layla umavdil ben yom uvein layla Adonai tzavaot shemo. El chai v'kayam tamid yimloch aleinu le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai chama arif aravim.
$150.
Ahavat olam Beit Yisrael Amcha ahavtam Torah u'mitzvot chukim u'mishpatim Otanu limadeta Al kein Adonai Eloheinu B'shochmeinu uvkumeinu Nasiach mechukecha Menismach merivrei Toratecha Uv'mitzvotecha Leolam vaed Ki hei mechayeinu Me'orech yameinu Ubahem nehgeh Yomam balayla Ve'ahavattecha al tasir mimenu le'olamim Baruch atah Adonai Ohev amo Yisrael Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam vaed.
Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha v'chayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shiftecha b'vetecha uvlektecha v'derech uvshokbecha uvkumecha uvshartam le'ot ayadecha v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha uktavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha leman tiskeru va'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'yetem kedoshim le'elohehem Ani Adonai Elohehem Asher hoseitem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem le'Elohim Ani Adonai Elohehem Adonai Elohehem emet
You shall love Adonai your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. Take to heart these instructions with which I charge you this day. Impress them upon your children. Recite them when you stay at home and when you are away, when you lie down and when you get up. Bind them as a sign on your hand and let them serve as a symbol on your forehead. Inscribe them on the doorposts of your house and on your guests.
Thus you shall remember to observe all my commandments and to be holy to your God. I am Adonai your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I am Adonai your God.
Stay tuned for tomorrow. Chazaku Baruch. 158.
מלכותך ראו בניך פוקי הים לפני משה זה אלינו ואמרו ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל
We continue with our Hashki Venu on page 160, our prayer for nightly peace. ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך ותקננו בעצה טובה מלפניך והושיענו למען שמך
בהגן מעדינו, בהסר מעלינו, אויב דבר מחרב, נרע וינון. בהסר שטן מלפנינו ומאחרינו, ובצל כנפיך תסתירנו, תסתירנו. ושמור צאתנו ובואנו לחיים ולשלום, מעתה ועד עולם, ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך, ברוך אתה אדוני. הפורש סוכת שלום עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל, מעל ירושלים.
Continue on the next page, Vishamru, our pledge to guard Shabbat.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל עוד היא לעולם. וביום השביעי שבת מי נפש.
We rise together for our tefillah 166.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואמותינו, אלוהי אברהם, אלוהי יצחק ואלוהי יעקב, אלוהי שרה, אלוהי רבקה, אלוהי רחל ואלוהי לאה, האל הגדול, הגיבור והנורא, אל עליון, גומל חסדים טובים וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה, מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן. ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי מתים אתה רב להושיע. משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיות מתים. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי המתים. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש.
We read together at the top of page 179. Grant us peace, your most precious gift, O eternal source of peace, and give us the will to proclaim its message to all the peoples of the earth. Bless our country as a safeguard of peace, its advocate among the nations. Make contentment reign within our borders, health and happiness within our homes. Strengthen the bonds of friendship and fellowship among all the inhabitants of every land. Plant virtue in every soul. May the love of your name hallow every home and every heart. Praise to you, Eternal One, who blesses our people with peace.
O may the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable, be acceptable unto thee, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer, my rock and my redeemer.
On this Shabbat, we think of those in our community, especially who need of healing of body or spirit. Temple Emanu-El thinks of Linda Applebaum, Sophia Berry, Chaim Bitron, Harold Seitlin, Deborah Shargwa, Eliyahu Mizrahi Ben Chava, Orit Cohen, Edward Goldberg, Howard Goldberg, Jeffrey Goldman, Sandra Goldman, Miriam Goldstein, Josie Hatfield, Ben Hazen, Evelyn Held, Donald Himmel, Edward Hyman, Corey Kessler, Sharon Lahan, Zane Manlik, Mark Petrosky, Malka Batrachel, Cindy Routman, Susan Schumann, David Siegel, Leslie Simon, Pam Huff Simpson, Liz Slive, Laurel Smith, Chrissy St. Charles, Don St. Charles, Samantha Wallace, Brenda Weinstein, and Edgar Zimmerman. For those with us tonight, if you're thinking of a loved one and you wish to share a name out loud, we invite you to do so as my eyes meet yours. For those names mentioned out loud and for those names that are still in our hearts, are Misha Berach 371.
Mishem Berach Avoteinu, Avraham, Yitzchak veYaakov. Mishem Berach Imoteinu, Sarah, Rivka, Leah veRachel. May the one who blessed our mothers, may the one who blessed our fathers, hear our prayer, hear our prayer, hear our prayer, hear our prayer, and bless us as well.
Before we have Dr. Seelig speak for us, the choir will pray a piece, Eila Ezkara. Its imagery is supposed to bring to mind the smoke rising from the gas chambers and the dead ascending to heaven.
Nafshi Shabbat Shalom. I'm Dr. Ralph Maxilik. I'm visiting professor of liturgical music at the Abraham Geiger College in Berlin, and I'm also the scholar in resident of music here at Temple Emanu-El in Birmingham, Alabama. As an educator, I would like to share two very poignant things in my life. Things that you don't forget, and things that moved me tremendously. And you will see in a moment what those two themes had in common. Growing up in New York City, and I still do consider living in New York City, I remember going to a congregation, Habunim in New York, a German congregation, and during Yizkor, when the organ started to play Enosh Kahartzi Yamov, that was the first piece we heard tonight, followed by Shaviti by Solomon Sulzer, followed by Adonai Ma'adam Be'enosh from Albert Kellerman, followed by The Lord is My Shepherd from Abraham Kaplan, and finally followed by El Malei Rachamim by Edward Birnbaum. I remember very clearly everybody crying in that synagogue. They were weeping. And I saw next to me, of course, my grandparents, my mother's parents, very quietly pulling out the tissues and crying. My father, who stood next to me, who lost his parents, never said a word. He stood there stoically and silent. And as we say in German, es hat mich ganz wild gemacht. It made me absolutely crazy watching this. And it made me very tense. But my mother said to me very quietly, "It is okay to cry in a synagogue." Well, as a 9 or 10-year-old child, I couldn't understand that. But it always reminded me when I hear Yizkor or when I hear death, what does one say to comfort a person? There's a reading which we read from Yom HaShoah that really sums it up. And that is, the service of Yizkor always begins with silence. But at Habunim, it was the silence of death. The silence after destruction. There were times when songs falter, when darkness fills life, when martyrdom becomes a constellation of faith against the unrelieved black of space about us. There are no words to reach beyond the edge of night, no messenger to tell the full tale. There's only silence. The silence of Job, the silence of the 6 million, the silence of memory, and of course, let us remember them as we linked our silence. As I told you once before, in our lives, we never discussed the Shoah in our family. In fact, my father was in Germany at Kristallnacht. All he told me was that the head of the SS told my grandfather it was time to take a little walk in the Rosengarten in Mannheim, in the park. And he did, because in the southern part of Germany, they rounded up thousands of Jews and sent them to Dachau, a concentration camp. And after weeks and months, for those who were captured, they all had to write a letter saying how well they were treated before they were released. But my father never said anything about this. It was only after his death it was mentioned. The other incident I'd like to share with you was that I was president of Hebrew Tabernacle, where I met Cantor Whitner for 9.5 years. And as president of a congregation, you see everything, you hear everything, you try and help people, you try and relate with people. But there are very few times in my life that I just couldn't react to something. We just heard Ela Eskara. Ela Eskara is done in the afternoon service. Ela Eskara means I recall thee. And it talks about our history, our forefathers, our rabbis who sanctified their name for God. The 6 million are mentioned. The famous rabbis are mentioned from the Crusades past. And there are some very, very gory details. And I received a letter from a very irate mother. And in the letter she wrote that her 6-year-old daughter couldn't sleep at night anymore because of what happened during the service. And my first reaction was, how was I going to respond to this mother? The first reaction was, I must say, I'm very impressed that your 6-year-old daughter can repeat everything from this service, because the mother listed in detail the entire service. And I was very impressed by that. But I didn't do that, because she wanted us to eliminate the Ela Eskara service in total, in its entirety. So my second response was, well, maybe I should write her a nasty letter and say, what are we, Holocaust deniers? What do we want to do, erase history that it never happened? But I didn't do that. I wanted to send her this. It was what Martin Buber said. This fragile life between birth and death can nevertheless be a fulfillment if it is a dialogue. In our life and experience, we are addressed by thought and speech and action, by producing and by influencing. We are able to answer. For the most part, we do not listen to the address, or we break into it with chatter. But if the word comes to us and the answer proceeds from us, then human life exists, though brokenly, in the world. The kindling of the response in that spark of the soul, the blazing up of the response which occurs time and again to unexpectedly approach speech, we term responsibility. I didn't send that either. I remained silent. And sometimes silence speaks volumes. Or does it? And the question becomes, what do you do in the situations I'm in or was in when you see somebody who you love in tears? How do you comfort them? How do you comfort somebody when you see pain and sorrow on their faces? Do you let them speak? Do you encourage them to speak? Or do you just remain calm and say nothing? I'm very fast in words. I'm very fast in my reactions, usually. And I don't want to be smart alecky, but sometimes I have the words for everybody. But as Shlomo Riskin once told me, when one goes to a Shiva visit, it's customary to let the person in mourning say something to you than you rather say something to them. But sometimes an act of kindness, a look, a hand over the shoulder is the way we comfort a bereaved mourner. I must say, as I was watching Asher and Noah tonight, you are the next generation. And I'm going to tell you something to both of you. One cannot remain silent in life, because you too, as well as everybody else in this room, has a responsibility to keep our faith alive. And if you remember nothing else from your bar mitzvah, remember my words. It's not about Am Yisrael Chai. That's important to us. But it's about L'dor Vador, from generation to generation. If you do not speak and you do not learn about the past will repeat itself. My good friends, don't kid yourself. We see it now. Kristallnacht can occur anywhere, anytime, any place. And if we are silent and we eradicate history, it will repeat itself. There are two words that I always believed in, and those two words are nie wieder. In German, that means never again. But if we remain silent, it will happen again. I want to end with a short reading because it's really appropriate, and I always end this when I talk about our past, especially about the Shoah and Yom HaShoah. You will know the response, and I assume there will be a crescendo of voices as I start reading this. In the rising of the sun and its going down, we remember them. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we remember them. In the opening of buds and in the rebirth of spring, we remember them. In the blueness of the sky and in the warmth of summer, we remember them. In the rustling of the leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we remember them. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we remember them. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember them. When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember them. When we have joys we yearn to share, we remember them. So long as we live, they too shall live, for they are now a part of us as we remember them. Our next part of our service is a martyrology Kaddish. And I know this is really sounding like a Yizkor service, but the reality is we always remember those who gave us life, whether it's a picture or a memory. We will always remember them in our hearts. We're going to ask that you please rise, and we will now continue with the Martyrology Kaddish, which is a Kaddish that lists the names of the camps. Auschwitz, Lodz, Hona, Abiyar,
וימליך מלכותי
Maidanek,
מחייכון וביומכון ובחיית כל בית ישראל
Drunken now.
בגלה ומזמן קריב
Chav now. Yanauska,
יהי שמי רבם מברך לעולם ולעלמי עלמיה יתברך וישתבח
Theresienstadt,
ויתפאר ויתרומם
Buchenwald,
ויתנשא ויתהדר
Treblinka,
ויתעלה ויתהלל
Vilnilna,
שמי דקודשא בריחו
Bergen-Belsen,
לעילה
Mauthausen,
לעילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה
Dachau,
תושבחתה ונחמתה
Minsk,
דמירן בעלמא
Warsaw,
נאמרו אמן. יהי שלום הרב מן שמיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן.
Yerushalayim,
עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן.
Aleinu 586, we remain standing.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, מקור עלינו ככל המונם. מה אנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו
On this Shabbat, we recall the yortzeits of Norman Edelman, Carl Applebaum, Herbert J. Baum Jr., Herman M. Beck, Herbert Meyer Besser, Max Binder, Molly Bowman Black, Isidore Bonfield, Beatrice Cohen, Helen Cohen, Irby Cohen, Frank Simpson Cook Sr., Mia Kushmeriu, Sharon Felder, Carl M. Feldman, Clarence Gluck, Hinky Gold, Miriam Goldberg, Rose Feldman Goldner, Pauline B. Harris, Elmer F. Jaspin, Frida Joseph, Arwen Ira Leslie, Richard Lewitz, Bernie B. Loveman, Morton Jerry Marks, Gerson May, Greta A. Malamed, Jack Otis, Dora Ravitz, Isidore Rotenstreich, Edward N. Solomon, John Sanson, Ralph L. Solomon, Natalie Gordon Sperling, Bernard Steiner, Milton Buddy Sturman, Beatrice Tucker, Murray Wheel, Lily Weinstein, Paul Weiner, Kenneth Eisner Weicker, and Estelle Yasmin. May their memories forever be a blessing. We rise together as a united congregation for Mortars Kaddish 598. Yikadal v'kadash shemei rabbah, bi'omad yivrach reotei v'amlich malchutei, b'chayachon u'vyomechon u'v'chayei techol beit Yisrael, b'agalau izman kariv v'imru.
Amen.
Yehei shemei rabbah mevarach le'olam ha'omei al-maya, yiparach v'yishtabach v'yitbarar v'yitromam yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yitale v'yitalal shemei kudsha
Brichu.
le'ela min kol mirchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiram yalma v'yimru.
Amen.
Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'yimru amen. We conclude with Ein Kelohenu 625.
Adon Olam.
Don't allow. Please.
אחד ואין שני להמשילו להחמירה בלי ראשית בלי תכלית melo ha'oz me'ha'misoram. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz b'te'avon.
Good Shabbos, everyone.
Shabbat shalom.